Hey folks, hey all doing, Lloyd here, or Mr. Hats as I'm known as in the VC. Thought I'd do another rankings video today. I love doing rankings videos. Anyway, I just think they're great. But this time I'm going to be looking at New Zealand band Split Enz. Weren't really well known outside of Australasia. They had a decent sized hit across Europe. I Got You, couple of minor hits, and that's really about it. So if you're not familiar with Split Enz, I guess their most prominent known member is Neil Finn, who ended up forming Crowded House. You guys all know Crowded House, right? And you've probably already watched my Neil Finn solo rankings video. So he's the most prominent member. He wasn't a founding member. The two main, I guess, influential founding members were Philip Rudd and Tim Finn, who is Neil's older brother. Anyway, the band started off as a prog rock, art rock, avant-garde type band back in the mid 1970s. After their first two albums, Phil Judd left and Neil Finn come in, and once Neil come in, their sound changed. Even though he didn't directly write songs on the first album he was with, and only a couple co-writes with Tim on the second album he was with them, their sound changed to a more 3.5 minute so-called pop type sound. So obviously he had influence there. The interesting thing to know about the Finn brothers, Neil and Tim Finn, is that when Neil joined the band, they had a real quirky way. They're a quirky band anyway, but they had a quirky way of writing songs. When it come to writing an album, Neil and Tim would both write down 5, 6, 7, whatever amount of phrases, words that would be album titles. They would then give their prospective list to the other person. So i.e. Neil would write 6 or 7 album titles down, Tim would have to write songs using that as an album title, those titles, and vice versa, etc. So it was a real kooky way of doing things. They did come together and write the odd line for each other, help finish things off, etc. So it's just a bit of background on the band. So let's get into the 9 studio albums by New Zealand band Split Enz. So at number 9 on my list I have Second Thoughts. This was released in 1976. It was their second album. It's prog rock, art rock, avant-garde, just totally out there quirky stuff. The main reason this is at number 9 is that there's 4 re-recordings of tracks from their debut album on here, and 2 tracks that were cast off from their debut album that didn't make it on that album. So yeah, I don't think the re-recordings actually work, in my opinion. It's very bland and blasé, and it just doesn't sound like a unified album to me. It's just a forced album to re-release. And this album was actually called Mental Notes across Europe and the US, as this was their debut album. So I'm guessing they're changing things from their first album, putting another couple of tracks on, like a lot of bands do when they want to go international. Best track on here for me is Late Last Night, and this album comes in at a pretty piss poor 4 out of 10 from me. Where am I going to put these? Put it there. Number 8 on my list, we're going to go to 1984, See You Around. This was their 9th studio album. This is pop rock with new wave leanings. It's the first and only album by the band not to feature original founding member Tim Finn. The music on the album sounds more like a precursor to what Crowded House were going to be, but not nearly anywhere as good as Crowded House. I'm really struggling to find positives with this album, only that it sounds like a Neil Finn album, but not really quite there. It sounds like a contractual obligation album to me, with just random tracks all packaged up as one coherent studio album, but it's actually quite incoherent, probably the way like I'm talking right now. Best track on here for me is Eddie Rayner's experimental instrumental The Lost Cat, which I really like. Actually, this album comes in at a pretty poor 4.5 out of 10. Also, number 7 on my list, we're going to go to 1975, Mental Notes. This was their debut album. It's prog rock, it's art rock, it's experimental rock. There's a bit of vaudeville music hall. There's just so much of everything, but not enough of anything to make it a coherent listen to me. And I think that's why it probably doesn't sell. The prog rock guys might have got this album thinking, yep, it's a prog rock album, and it's not totally a prog rock album. There's a lot of different things that they're not going to like. The same with the art rock guys, the same with the experimental and the vaudeville music hall, dance hall type guys. There was just nothing to define a sound. I find this album more of a curiosity than an actual work of art, as it's the uniqueness and the quirkiness that elevates it above the albums that I've just mentioned, and that's really the only appeal to it to me, as opposed to not really liking many of the songs. The most interesting and intriguing songs on the album, I'm not saying best, notice, Stranger Than Fiction and Under the Wheel. This one also comes in at 4.5 out of 10. So now we're down to the top 6, and I love all 6 of these albums. So you can see there's a clear difference between the 2 early albums, where they're obviously trying to find a groove, trying to find a sound, and the last album where they'd actually capitulated, like a supernova basically, but everything else is spot on in my opinion. So at number 6 we go to 1982, and it's Time and Tide. This is their 7th album. It's rock, it's new wave, there's sea shanty stuff on here as well. Tim Finn's songs are very dark, because he's just come out of the other side of a nervous breakdown. Songs like Dirty Creature and Haul Away really sum up that dark place he was in, that deep well that he managed to get out of. The video for Dirty Creature is also very dark as well, very gloomy, as opposed to uplifting and poppy and colourful like most of their videos were. It's a very mature sounding album, and there's very little of the quirkiness of previous albums. Best tracks on here for me, the 2 I've mentioned, Dirty Creature and Haul Away, plus the sea shanty 6 Months in a Leaky Boat. That comes in at 7.6 out of 10 for me. Coming in at number 5 on my list, we're going to go to 1983, Conflicting Emotions, their 8th album of 9. Lots of tensions on this album, thus the title. Tim's debut solo album had been released not long before this, 6 or 8 months previous. It was a huge multi-platinum selling album here in Australia, and he had 3 huge hits off it as well. So you could see his intentions were more focused on a solo career than a band career, thus the conflicted emotions within the band. He wanted to promote that album as well instead of doing this one, so he certainly wasn't there mentally, even if he was physically. There's rock, there's pop, there's new wave, there's a ballad, there's a 40s sounding jazz tune, and a quirky tune, which is everything you would expect from a Split Enz album. It's a solid album despite its tensions. Best tracks on here for me are the quirky Bullet Brain and Cactus Head, the brilliant Message to My Girl ballad, and Bon Voyage, which is the last song on the album. And it also happens to be a Tim Finn song. He's saying Bon Voyage to the band and the fans. So another 7.8 out of 10 album for me. Number 4 on my list, we're going to go to 1977. Dysrhythmia, their 3rd album. It's very art rock. It is the first album featuring Neil Finn, so that's definitely a landmark moment for the band. Although he didn't write anything, his presence brings a shift to the overall sound of the album. As I mentioned, it's art rock, but that's more in the flamboyancy of the videos, the quirky haircuts, the makeup, the weird stage outfits, etc., etc. You know, it's quirky and it's kooky, but in a good way. The best tracks on here for me are My Mistake, Charlie, and Boulder's Brass. This one comes in at 8 out of 10 for me. Up to the top 3 now. We're going to go to 1981, number 3. Corroboree is the title here in Australia. It was called Waita. Everywhere else in the world, it's their 6th studio album. So the title means sing or song and get together in both New Zealand, Maori, and Australian Aboriginal. So the original idea for the album was to call it whatever the title was going to be, a name to reflect the traditional tribes, first inhabitants of the countries or main countries that this was going to be released in. But that was going to be a very time-consuming process of reworking the album cover back then, because don't forget, it was all physical back then. It wasn't all digitally made. So yeah, it was going to be a lot of expense and a lot of time to do that. So the band decided just to do that in Australia, being, you know, just across the pond from New Zealand. The artwork that had to be changed in North America anyway, because as far as the Americans were concerned, brown is the color of shit, so they didn't want the brown on the artwork. So the artwork there was purple, grey, black and white. So where the brown is shown, that was shades of purple and grey. This is an excellent rock album. It's got hints of new wave on it as well. It's got the quirky stuff. It's everything you would expect from a Split Enz album. Best tracks on here for me include History Never Repeats, which is my favourite single of Split Enz of all time. You got Hard Act to Follow and Albert of India. This one comes in at 8.2 out of 10 for me. At number 2 on my list, could have got out the laser etched vinyl, but I just couldn't be bothered. I just thought I'd show the CD for this one. 1980s True Colours, their 5th studio album. This is new wave post-punk. Opens up with the punk-esque sounding Shark Attack, and then the new wave sounding I Got You. It flip-flops between those two styles effortlessly on side 1 before ending with the sad I Hope I Never ballad. Side 2 is a bit more quirky. It's effervescent. That's a strange word. Effervescent. It's very bubbly. It's very lively. But it's just as effective as the post-punk new wave of side 1. Best tracks on here for me are the ones I mentioned: Shark Attack, I Got You, I Hope I Never, plus Poor Boy and I Wouldn't Dream of It. This one comes in at 8.5 out of 10, which leaves my number 1 album by Split Enz, their 4th studio album. This was released in 1979, Frenzy. It's new wave, it's post-punk, it's quirky, it's dancehall, there's world music on it, but it all remains pop and radio friendly and easy to absorb. It's a million miles away from, their art rock, prog rock beginnings. I'll quickly go through the tracks. I See Red, that's really punk meets new wave. It's got a bit of a Flock of Seagulls I Ran vibe to it, just with a lot more guitars, and obviously 2 or 3 years before the Flock of Seagulls. Give It a Whirl, ominously dark new wave sounding. I mean, it's a happy lyrically song, but it's very dark musically. Then we've got Master Plan. That one almost has a bit of a Supertramp vibe. If you could send the vocals just to that higher pitch like Roger Hodgson, you'd have a Supertramp track there for sure. Famous People, it's got a real funky danceable beat and it's quirky pop. Hermit McDermott, I call that schizo hillbilly. That's the only way I can describe it. It's yeah, schizophrenic hillbilly stuff. Absolutely brilliant. Stuff and Nonsense, that's a melancholy ballad. Marooned, that's experimental pop. Frenzy, quirky and strangely intriguing, clever alt pop before alt pop was even a thing. Um, the roughest, toughest game in the world, that's just a straightforward pop song. That's beautiful. She got body, she's got soul. That's pop music at its catchiest, finest moment. I just don't know why it wasn't released as a single by the band. It's just so radio friendly. Anyone would like it. It's just an innocent song. Betty, I don't know who Betty is. I've tried to find out through the years. I can't figure out who the Betty is in this next song, which is called Betty. It's a decent pop rock track with, again, another slight Supertramp vibe happening. Then you got Abu Dhabi. It's a tongue-in-cheek, quirky rocker. Sort of, they put on the accents a little bit. There's a couple of tongue-in-cheek little moments where they're describing Westerners from an Arab point of view. So it's sort of like, in that sort of sense, it's like New Delhi by Madness from their Rise and Fall album type thing, without sounding like that, of course. Shush Poppy. Mind Over Matter is the final track, and that harks back to that punky new wave sound of I See Red to close off the album. So it's bookended by two great new wave / punk, post-punk tracks. Absolutely brilliant. Best tracks on here for me, I See Red, Hermit McDermott and Stuff and Nonsense. This one comes out at an excellent 9.5 out of 10. So this is a really good place to start with their career. Then go back and listen to their debut album, and you'll see that in the space of 3 or 4 years they have just got a million miles apart from where they started. So that's it, folks. That's my look at the 9 studio albums by one of my favourite bands of all time, one of Morton Nusted's favourite bands of all time, Split Enz. Anyway, guys, leave your comments in the comments section below. Give me the thumbs up if you haven't already done so. Hit that subscribe button down there somewhere, and let me know what you think of Split Enz, or if I've encouraged you to go and seek out some Split Enz or even stream them. They're well worth knowing, and I think if they had been from the UK or US, they would have been massive worldwide. Noel Gallagher slates them as one of his favourite bands of all time. Paul Weller does also. McCartney is a big fan of Split Enz. Elton John. So there's a lot of big names that absolutely have been attracted to Split Enz over the years and discovered them. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Stay safe. Take care. All for now. Catch you around, and bye, folks.